someone who was recently entered the church asked me about reading the Bible. How do you read the Bible, he wanted to know. Well, I said there's a lot of different ways. People do different things. Some people read a chapter a day. Some people read the whole Bible in a year. But I said the best way to read the Bible is to read it with the rest of the community, with the rest of the church. I said, why don't you start this way? Every day, read those portions of the Bible which you find in the Missal, in the daily Mass, the first reading and the second reading. And then on Sunday, read the first, second, and third reading, as we just did, ending up with the Gospel. Do that, because in 3 years, you will have read the whole Bible, because it's all contained in the worship of our church as we meet week after week after week throughout a 3-year period, and on the weekday readings over a 2-year period. That's really the best way to immerse yourself in the Bible, at least beginning. And it's really true. Remember, ever since Easter, the gospel has been about one of the appearances of Jesus after he rose from the tomb. Except for last week. We stopped hearing about that. And the gospel went all the way back to the night before Jesus died, the night of the Last Supper, and read the chapters in John's gospel where Jesus is telling the community what he expects of them, what his death and resurrection are going to mean for them and for the world. We just started those readings last Sunday, and we continued them with John's Gospel, chapters 14 to 17, 2 or 3 pages. What the message here is that what happened to Jesus once and for all continues down through the ages in the community which he gathered around him. And that's us. That's us. We carry on the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus in what Paul calls the body of Christ. In one of his letters, he said, you, he was talking to his parish or his community, you are the body of Christ. And so whatever Jesus accomplished in his lifetime is to go on down through the generations, down through the years, not in the person of Jesus who has ascended to his Father, as we'll celebrate next Sunday, in the flesh, but in the flesh of the community which he gathered around him, which Paul says is the body of Christ. You, he said, you my parishioners, are the presence of Christ in your world. So if you go back to what Jesus had to say at the Last Supper, which we began to read last week, one of the things he said was, as the Father has loved me, I have loved you. That's a pretty heavy statement. Christ is saying, I love you folks the way my Father loves me. And then he says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Did you ever ask yourself, do you really love Christ? And later in my life, going many years being a Christian, being a priest and all that, but every once in a while I say, do you really love Christ? How do you know you love Christ? I mean, I have never seen him. I've never heard his voice. How do I know? How do you know you love Christ? Then he continued at the Last Supper, as long as you did it to one of these, the least of my brothers, you did it to me. As long as you loved one of my folks, and we're all his folks, you love me. That's proof positive of your love for Christ, even though you have never seen him or never heard his voice, as you hear the voice of another human being. That's what I mean. The scriptures, if we read them in union with the church throughout the year, will lead us to a greater insight, I think, than just paging through the Bible and taking little bits here and there, but it unites the whole of the scriptures and shows us God's plan coming to fulfillment in Jesus. And we are not only the recipients of that plan, the people who benefit from it, but we are the people who carry on that plan of God down to this very moment. If you love me, keep my commandments. In other words, go through life doing what I did, taking care of people. That's why Pope Francis, he was always saying to us, the church is like a field hospital in the middle of a battlefield where people come to be healed. And the Christian community is like a hospital in the middle of our world where people can come to be heard, to be listened to be healed, prayed for, and made whole again. Just doing exactly in our lives together as a community and as individual Christians what Jesus did as he went through the years of his life. Who did he ever meet that he did not accept? Who did he ever meet that was ill that he did not cure, or even dead and raise up? And so he calls on us, the scriptures call on us to continue that kind of messaging and healing down to our very day. That's why reading the Bible in union with the worship of the church is really the best way to come to grips with what the Bible is telling us. We are all called, in other words, to be Christ in our day, just as Jesus of Nazareth was Christ in his day.